much I missed when you didn't exist. I am Corbett, and I am 53.
And I'm Lucy, and I'm 23.
There is such a gap between us, it's ridiculous.
What do you mean? That's not that that's normal parenting gaps.
It's a
What?
normal parenting gap.
I don't know. I would say so.
Well, you've missed so much in your life because you weren't alive when I was alive. You should have been alive when I was alive. It's better.
I think that would have made this whole father-daughter thing weird if I was alive when you were alive.
That's probably true. Generations. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
So, with the holidays on approach, I am thinking of toys. There's no toy like an old toy, and in this case, the Cabbage Patch Kids. You don't even know what a Cabbage Patch Kid is. Did you even know what a Cabbage Patch Kid is?
Yeah, they were around. I feel like they were around a lot when I was like up until, I don't know, maybe 8 years old. And then they kind of teetered off for a little bit because I feel like they got more obsessed with American Girl dolls or
Maybe
Barbies.
you were more
Or
obsessed with American Girl
I mean,
dolls.
yeah, you never really know. Cabbage Patch Kids were goofy, weird looking little baby dolls.
Okay,
I
we'll
don't
go
know.
with that. You at least have seen one. Got it.
Yes.
So just to describe that, they are weird little baby dolls, but they're baby dolls to say the least. Now, what might tie in with one of our other shows, the oil crisis specifically, because of the oil crisis, there was a shortage on plastics because petroleum makes certain plastics. A lot of toys kind of got scrapped because toys aren't required and other plastic parts are. What are you going to do?
What other plastic parts? For like what?
Mechanical things? I don't know. Plastic.
Don't they use metal for mechanical things?
No, they use plastics for different stuff. Plastic is a pretty versatile thing. And at the time of most dolls and figures, Barbie, for example, it's a pretty big doll that eats up a lot of plastic. And they were trying to figure out ways to cut it down, make smaller ones. This is when G.I. Joe went from a 12-inch figure to a 3-inch figure.
Whoa.
Ultimately, people were trying to figure out other ways to make toys using other materials that aren't plastic or using less plastic or something along those lines.
Yeah.
There was a brand called Little People, which was, I think, put out by Fisher Price. And they got a designer, I believe the designer, okay, they got a designer called Xavier Roberts, who was like the father of all Cabbage Patch children. The big gimmick with Cabbage Patch children was that they all came with a certificate of their birth. Oh, no, with their adoption, I think, because you adopt the child.
You
It's
could
your
claim them
child.
as your
Yeah, you can claim it.
own.
You got an official certificate from the, oh, what was it? The Country Family Hospital or the Children's Family Hospital. It was some made up hospital, but it sounded pretty neat. And it's like, hey, you get this. But it was cute. They were based off of the Little People by Fisher Price, but they became the Cabbage Patch Kids because they were remarketed through Coleco. Coleco did video games at the time, as far as I remember. Anyway, and that was like the late 70s when that came around. The Cabbage Patch Kids only had like a plastic head. So the rest
And
of
the
them
rest
was
of it
all
was cloth and
cloth,
like.
yarn, clothing materials, which was like the old rag dolls. The thing is, you can't sell a kid an old rag doll. It's not going to sell. But the Cabbage Patch Kids had the whole thing of you adopt it. It's your child. It has a specific name. It has a specific, you wouldn't find another one like it because they're all different, supposedly. I would presume there's thousands of the same one, but who knows? Anyway, by 82, they were very, very popular. And more specifically, by 83, they caused riots. This is what we're really talking about, is probably the riots, the Christmas riots of 83. People literally punching, fighting, kicking, like since what would become the Black Friday attack squad that we know now started about then. People had to have this doll for their children. Their children would not have a good Christmas at all. There's no way unless they had this thing. And, I just want to point out
Okay.
Dr. Seuss's The Grinch Who Stole Christmas came out in the 60s. And it was
Yes.
like, we're all about material things. We're so much about material things. Like, it was nothing like that until the 80s, as far as I know. In the 70s, there were toys. Every kid got toys. That was a thing. You had a wagon, you had a Tonka truck, you had your G.I. Joe, you had whatever it was, but nobody had to go punch somebody else in order to get it. It was just a thing. By the time the 80s came around, that's when toys became the thing, the status symbol for the children, and a status symbol by proxy for
Mm.
the adults. Because if my child has the thing, then they must be doing well.
Okay, so you had toys when you were growing up and not a rock and some sticks?
Sometimes. But I did walk to school uphill both ways through the snow, so.
Through the snow in Texas? Okay. But the riots,
The
the
riots,
brutality.
it was the first time people kind of saw the grim nature to get something so trivial, so childish, a toy, a doll. People were the dolls itself, I think, retailed for close to $20, but they would resell in the black market at 60 to 80 and even 100.
Jeez. There
And
was
it
a
was like,
black market for Cabbage Patch
oh
dolls?
yeah,
But
yeah.
why?
Because if you worked in the store, you could make sure that the 100 that you were about to set out turned into 20, which of course drove it up even more because people wanted it so bad. And then you would take the other ones out the back door and go sell them in the alleyway for 4 times the price.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was kind of bad.
Yeah, that sounds wild.
But that's when people were standing out in lines. People were waiting for hours and hours, and they'd open the door, and there was 100 people out the door, and only 20 Cabbage Patch Kids sitting on the shelf. And it was whoever the first ones that came through were, and then of course people behind them immediately lost it.
Yeah. How did the marketing for the Cabbage Patch dolls work? Because I feel like the kind of toy selling advertisements that you see on cable, at least since I've been alive, are kind of an after, well, not an afterthought, but an product of the marketing of the 90s of like, whoa, check out this cool toy. It can do this. Right? And I feel like Cabbage Patch has a different kind of message of, oh, it's your child. You need to take care of it.
No, it was like a lot of dolls like its time. The dolls that cry and the dolls that drink from bottles and the dolls that they all had a trick and a gimmick. Seems like every baby doll at the time was coming through probably since the 60s. They'd
Yeah.
have some kind of automated system in them. Cabbage Patch Kids was the first go-to, essentially a classic stuffed doll that you could change and dress much like a Barbie doll, but it's a baby and you have to take care of it.
Yeah.
It puts the you're a parent right into the child's hand. I think that was the real
Oh.
marketing ploy that got it going because, like, oh no, this isn't just a doll. This is a practice child for you, the mother to be, you 6-year-old little girl.
Yes. Instilling those gender roles early on.
Yep. And the funny thing is, I would have expected like G.I. Joe to be the bigger seller. I mean, it was one of the bigger sellers later on. It was a general popular item. Star Wars was up there because it was in the mainstream media. People saw it all the time, 70s.
Yeah.
And the little figures were collectible. And of course, those figures are worth quite a bit. But there was never, the Cabbage Patch Kids had the first real essential violence. People were fighting over a child's toy. That was the crazy, crazy part. I think the other thing that really surprised me is every other toy at the time, they had deregulated how children's programming worked at the time. You were not allowed by the rules to make a commercial. It had to show the toy, just the toy doing whatever it does. Like, I have
Yeah.
this toy and it's cool. You cannot show it as a cartoon showing others like it doing crazy stuff that it cannot do as a toy because like if you had a toy jet it
False
can't fly.
advertising kind of thing.
Right, they are not allowed to do that.
Okay.
Then they deregulated children's programming so you could put out a toy line that is essentially its own cartoon. So G.I. Joe, Transformers, He-Man, those were all toys that were made with the idea of, I don't know, sell it. And they just made a cartoon and pumped it. I figured for sure there'd be a
Oh.
Cabbage Patch Kids cartoon. There was later on, but not at the time. It seems like that would be a major, major seller.
Yeah.
Because there was, well, Strawberry Shortcake, Rainbow Bright. There were a lot of other girls' toys that were marketed that way and did pretty well. But again, nobody punched somebody else in the face over a Strawberry Shortcake doll. But Cabbage Patch Kids, buddy boy, people got really, really angry about it. And I think part of it was they just shortened the supply, or maybe they didn't realize the supply was going to be so high. I have a feeling it was more they shortened the supply and then kind of played off, oh, we didn't know.
Yeah.
And it drove things through the roof and it made it insane. By the next year, it wasn't as bad. The production was higher, the demand was lower. So it kind
Mm-hmm.
of matched itself out. But I did find out when I was doing a little background kind of remembrance and research on the show, I did find out that the dolls themselves were actually created by Martha Nelson. She made some version of the doll that's really close back before it became part of Coleco. And Xavier Roberts, the guy who is the father of all creation for Cabbage Patch Kids, and I presume he did all the marketing planning and stuff around that.
Yeah.
He showed up at like some of her craft fairs where she was putting these dolls out and borrowed the idea. She sued him in '83 for $1 million and settled out of court for whatever she got. The Cabbage Patch legacy is that it made well over $4 billion and apparently is still in production. So you can still get a Cabbage Patch Kid if you need to go punch somebody in the face. That's a problem you have, really.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Apparently. That's insane. Just find something else. There is simply no way that that is the only thing that your child can be obsessed with. There are so many other things.
There were a lot of kids who had to have stuff, and I think it was because it was a toy. People just took the assumption that it'll be there. They go to the store and it wasn't, which
Yeah.
is their own problem, really. But of course, I will say one thing that I kind of laugh about and I enjoy still is the knockoff or the Garbage Pail Kids that came out.
There was a knockoff?
It was a comedic knockoff. It was a
Oh.
collector's card series called the Garbage Pail Kids.
Yeah.
Pukey Pete and stuff like that. And they're
Oh my
same
gosh.
face design, but they were all like horrible, horrible, horrible versions of the children. But they were funny. There was tons and tons of that. The Care Bears, I think, were about that same time, about pretty close to it, and they were very, very popular.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't. Again, they never had that same craze. In fact, I don't remember that craze happening again until '96 or '95.
With what?
Tickle Me Elmo.
Oh, I remember Tickle Me Elmo.
Yeah,
That's
but you
crazy.
didn't exist when that came out, though.
I didn't exist, but I remember seeing like all the ads for it, and he still exists. And
No, it's
yeah,
Tickle Me Elmo. He's a thing.
yeah,
I mean, I would say every Christmas there's always kind of a
the
rush.
hot ticket item. Yeah,
Yeah, you got to get this one because your kid's gonna want it. But
yeah,
most stuff now is electronics. You're fighting your way in to bash people's face in over some television or some new phone or something like that.
yeah.
So somehow, somewhere in all of this, people got really aggressive about shopping, and I really don't know why, but it did.
Because you have to be unique, but also be the first one to give the review. Because if you're the first one to give the review, then you're cool.
Yeah, that's probably true nowadays. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's a good point. Now that it's the future, when you go to buy your toys,
Oh my gosh. Thank goodness for online shopping, dude, because I don't think anyone really wants to go out into those crowds. I don't know if it's cheaper or if you're just, I mean, for most people at this point, because it's around Thanksgiving, it's kind of one of the few times like you can get your last call of last minute shopping for online shopping at least
hmm,
in order for it to be guaranteed on time for Christmas. Shopping in person seems so much more like a chore than it does like a fun and exciting thing because so many people either are addressing their anxiety or are just now getting it. But I think the whole point of the experience of shopping in the store is just a thing of the past. I think in terms of hot ticket items, I know I've heard about stuff being out of stock forever and ever and ever because it happened with, I guess, more recently with the Xbox and the PS5, I want to say,
hmm.
or the PS5 and the Xbox X. But I remember everyone's complaining because they were sold out for months and months and months, and people are spending, $700 for this technology that they're going to reuse. And recently I've been seeing a lot of people selling their PS5s because they're wanting the PS5 Pro. And so they're selling this item that they bought for $600, $700, and they're selling it for $200. And I'm like, dude, where's the increase of capital? I mean, it's capitalism at its finest. It's just you're buying the hot ticket item and then selling it so someone else can get it for scraps. But you're still going to buy the hot ticket item so that way you can be the influencer that tried it first and you can get all the reviews and you can get the most likes and all that stuff.
So
It's
would you say
crazy.
that's your go-to nowadays? Is everybody's it's all about the reviews and the first person to open it, look at it, touch it, that sort of thing?
I mean, I feel like it is. I mean, there's kids that just sit and watch YouTube videos of people unboxing things because either they like the visual of opening a box like it's Christmas, or they like to see the review because they want to know how they should feel before they go get it. So I wonder if that's why people are so hesitant to also shop and go buy things, is because they want to see the review first. But there are the people that want to do the review so that way they get the content, they get the viewers, they get the what have you.
I hear you.
So it just depends on the personality, I guess.
I don't know. In-person shopping though is pretty handy when it comes to like getting clothes and stuff because you want to make sure it
Yeah.
fits or that the material feels right, things like that.
Yeah. That's true.
Gotta admit, I will admit for online shopping, there's a lot of things, especially Amazon wise, they make it so easy to return
Yeah.
that it's like, well, this is dumb. Send it back, and then it goes right back, and you never lost a thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's
That
even been ads lately that are just people online shopping are like, here's what's going on at the store that you're missing. And it's just chaos and it's the fighting and the I want first. And then you go back to, it's like a pano back to them in their living room and they're just clickety clacking away and like, this is so much more peaceful than going out during Black Friday. And now Amazon has the whole week.
yeah,
You can start now.
that is pretty crazy. But
So,
yeah, there has been
crazy.
little. I don't think there's been quite the craze like the Cabbage Patch Kids brought around, and there were other toys that popped in and popped out. I think Tickle Me Elmo was probably the last one. Video game consoles are kind of a have to get, but I wouldn't call them the same craze level.
Yeah.
They're just willing to hurt each other over a toy.
Yeah.
I know your video game console is incredibly important, but odds are it's probably not.
There's so much you can do on it. How could you not? Or maybe even like the Oculus, like when that first came out, that was huge and everyone had to get their hands on it. But it was so expensive. It was ridiculous.
Hmm.
Too many things. I don't know if there are really big dolls, unless like when Frozen came out, all of those dolls were really popular and you had to like get the Frozen thing because every single girl goes through their Frozen phase. But now I guess it's Moana, since Moana's also
Well,
come
you
out
just
at
had
this point.
Barbie, the movie Barbie, so I'm sure that's kind of had a bit of a craze going on for it too.
Very true. But I don't know if Barbie really reached the younger audience because I think it was more fun. But when you're a young kid, you don't really get all the deep messages that were in it. And so I'm not sure if it bumped up sales or if it decreased them because parents were like, whoa, this is such a surreal message that it's telling its audience.
I don't know. Personally, I really liked it. I mean, when I was a kid, all the cartoons were kind of like that. Any good cartoon, at least, was like that. They were deep enough that you could watch it, and it was fun as a kid to watch. But there was a deeper message or a story behind it that you're like, oh, as an adult, get it.
Mm
There'll be jokes or something in older TV shows and movies that are like, oh, I saw that totally different as a kid.
hmm.
That's not the same. But it's still there.
Yeah.
That shows, its ability to live for a while, I would think.
It's true. Toys do not live that long, unfortunately.
Well, toys create memories, and memories carry your past. That's why people will spend like thousands of dollars to buy a version of their old toy that's still in mint condition or whatever. I
True.
don't know if I would say like that's a great idea, but if you really want something to make yourself feel really good about something that happened a long time ago, I get it.
Yeah, true. But again, capitalism, paying
Yeah.
money for your memories back, that's brutal.
little bit. That your memories can be yours, and that's a good thing too. So,
Yeah.
I don't remember specifically having to get you a toy that was like the Cabbage Patch Kids. So so sought after. Do you remember wanting something ever so bad that you didn't get? It was such a disappointment, or something
Well,
like that.
yeah, I remember as a kid, I like wanted the Easy Bake Oven, or I don't know, maybe an American Girl doll, or I don't, maybe clothes, because I was really into clothes, and that was kind of a statement thing where I went to school, I guess, was the amount of like the fancy clothes that you had.
Mm, you were about the clothes. I'll give you that.
I was, you know? I would say a really cool Christmas present that I got was ice skates, which I'd been wanting for a while, but I just figured they were so expensive I shouldn't worry about it because I can always rent them. But
Yeah.
I never wanted anything that bad to where I was like, I'm gonna die if I don't get it.
Mm.
But like this, that stuff was cool, but no, it wasn't anything too crazy. What were you thinking about? What were you gonna get as a kid?
Well, I think it may be a generational thing. I will admit I was probably way more spoiled than I needed to be, because I had my grandmother and my mother were both really good about getting the toys I wanted. Like, I was part of the Star Wars craze. That was a big deal. I
Yeah.
don't think it was nearly the same craze as the Cabbage Patch Kids, though. There was no people being beaten down in the store to get Star Wars stuff.
Hey,
I
you
will
don't know. You
say
weren't there.
that yeah, I was. I wasn't in the store, but this is the whole point. You didn't exist. You weren't there. Don't give me that. I remember specifically there was a year my grandmother kind of fooled me, but she did it. She did it in a way that I learned a lot from it because of it. I wanted a robot that was called a Shogun Warrior. And anybody who knows what a Shogun Warrior is like, oh my gosh, those were awesome because they were like 2.5 foot tall plastic toys with launchable fists. How cool is
Whoa.
that?
That sounds like the beginning of a Terminator movie.
They were neat and they were really big. And the thing is, my grandmother put a big package underneath the Christmas tree. And I was so stoked for that. Like, it's my Shogun Warrior. I'm so excited for my Shogun Warrior. I'm going to get my Shogun Warrior. And I opened it up, and it was a cassette recorder. I had mentioned this, I think, way back in the cassette episode, but I got
Mm.
this cassette recorder, and it was like such a letdown at the time. Just like, this isn't a Shogun Warrior. But ultimately, I wound up using that cassette recorder all over the place. I would record every dumb thing me and my sister would do. We just sit and make fart noises and everything else in the world trying to do things. And it's probably the reason why I got into recording the way, well, doing this, because I worked with recordings all the time. Like, I would record something off the TV and then re-edit it. I'd record something off the radio and then re-edit it again. I was always recording. So in a way, my grandmother really kind of taught me, be happy with what you get. Now, granted, I would say she probably got me what I wanted most of the time, as did my mom. So my mother and grandmother had a finger on the pulse of toys. Let me tell you. So I was definitely spoiled in that sense. But
Mm-hmm.
I think if anybody should take anything away from this episode, it's you don't have to go punch somebody in the face to make your kid happy.
Yeah, I would say making those memories is way more important because you can always get the hot ticket item. But I feel like any parent knows that you're going to play with the toy for about a day, maybe a week if you're lucky. And then it's just back to the same old routines. So like get something meaningful.
Well, enjoy the holiday, I think, is the bigger.
Well, yeah, enjoy the holiday, but
Enjoy the holiday, enjoy the time together, because that time will pass.
yeah.
And then you will be an old man talking to your young children on a radio show.
Well, I don't know if I'll be an old man, but
You don't know
that's
what the
okay.
future's like.
Maybe I'll be a robot. You don't know.
If your fists launch, then it'll be awesome.
Oh my gosh.
So
Uh-huh.
anyway, happy holidays to everybody, and for what you missed when you didn't exist, I'm Corbett.
And I'm Lucy. Enjoy your holidays.